Is it possible that AI can actually explain your estimate better than your insurance company? Hey, everybody, welcome back to the airing of grievances. So very nice to have you along. Rob, happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday to you. Happy Saturday to you. Thanks so much for tuning in. We got quite a show for you today.
Oh my gosh. Listen, you know that the AI toothpaste is out of the tube. You know that. You can't put it back in. And so, love it or hate it, it's here to stay. And today we've got a story that you're just going to have to hear to believe.
It's shocking.
It really is.
It's shocking.
Rob, set this up for us. How do we even get where we are?
Here's how crazy it is. I don't have anything to do with this AI stuff. Eric's been playing with it,
Oh, sure. You're blaming it on me now.
and I was made aware of a different piece of AI than what you're used to using, which has been ChatGPT.
Right.
Um, and I said, Eric, I got this other thing.
Yep.
Let's drop an estimate down inside of it and see if it even recognizes it as an estimate or would understand what it is.
Right.
And what we got back,
It'll blow your socks off. We're going to share it with you, so stick with us. But Rob, let's back it up for just a minute. What was your expectation when you said, "Throw this estimate into it and see what it knows"?
I, I had no expectation. I thought it wasn't going to recognize it or have, I just, I had zero expectation that it would come back with anything.
Yeah,
It's just unbelievable.
the technology that we're talking about is Google's NotebookLM. And we will put a link to that. It is completely free. And we're going to recommend that anytime you need to understand something better, you plug in NotebookLM, throw whatever it is you need to understand into it, and sit back and watch the magic.
Yeah. So we wrote an estimate on a vehicle, a Lexus, for one of my dear friends,
Yep.
and uh, they have they had their insurance company take a peek at it,
Hmm.
and we got their estimate, and this is what we, decided to download and said, hey, let's see what it does, what it understands, what it doesn't understand, and that's just incredible. But this insurer that they have is, you'll remember our insurance ranking video,
Yes.
and I like to keep going back to it because it's consistent.
It explains a whole lot.
It's consistent. This insurer we're talking about is ranked 89 out of a possible 97. So we asked AI, I guess, to take a peek at it for the guest and explain it.
Yeah.
Uh, and that's what we're going to present for you today, because I have sent this to several colleagues as well as the guest,
Yes.
and all of them have just been blown away by the content. It's just unbelievable.
Yeah, so just let me set this up before we get to play the recording of what came back. Notebook LM allows kind of a podcast format of AI, but if you closed your eyes, you would never know. And the prompt that I put in, I uploaded estimate, the estimate of record, and then the prompt that I put in was, please explain this to me as if I don't know what I'm talking about, and answer this question: are my best interests being looked after? This is what came out.
All right, so welcome to another deep dive where we like to take complex topics and break them down so you, the listener, can really understand what's going on.
Exactly right. We want to make sure you have all the knowledge.
Yeah, and today we're tackling Something I think a lot of people have had to deal with at some point, but probably never really understood the ins and outs of it.
Definitely a topic most people would rather avoid.
Oh, yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
Nobody wants to think about getting in a car accident, but
Yeah.
it's one of those things you just never know. And if it does happen, you want to be prepared, right?
You really do. And today we're going to help you do just that by doing a deep dive into something called an insurance estimate of record.
And this estimate is specifically for collision repair. And you, our listeners, have given us a real-world example to work with today.
That's right. We have an actual estimate from Safeco Insurance to dig into.
So we can really see what goes on behind the scenes when you get in an accident and file a claim, and how this estimate can impact how your car's repaired, what it might cost, and just the whole process.
It's pretty eye-opening.
Absolutely. And even if you're lucky enough to have never been in an accident, this information is still so valuable because it lets you see the things that insurance companies do to keep costs down and how those practices might affect the quality of your car's repair if you ever do need it.
Yeah, knowing this stuff ahead of time can be a huge advantage if you ever find yourself needing to deal with an insurance claim.
Definitely. So let's jump right in and break down this estimate. Some good. Okay, so at the very top, we have some basic information like the date of the loss, the vehicle involved, which in this case is a 2021 Lexus RX 450, or is kind of a newer hybrid model.
Right.
And the repair facility listed here is Nylund's Collision Center. So this is where the car would be taken for repairs.
Okay.
And then we see the initial estimate, the total amount, which is a little over $5,700 minus a $1,000 deductible. Pretty standard stuff, right?
Seems like it, but this is where things start to get interesting.
Exactly, because if you look just a little bit further, you start to see some phrases and notes that hint at a much more complex picture.
Oh, yeah, definitely.
Okay, so one of the first things that really jumps out is a section called Supplement Instructions.
I see that.
And in big bold letters, it says that all supplements require prior approval by Liberty Mutual Safeco Insurance Company. So what exactly does that mean for the vehicle owner?
Well, a supplement in this context is basically any extra cost or any repair work that the shop discovers needs to be done after they've already made the initial estimate.
Ah, so like once they actually start taking the car apart, they might find hidden damage or realize something needs to be done differently than they first thought.
Exactly. And this is where it can get tricky for the consumer, because if the shop finds they need to do additional repairs or use more parts, well, they can't just go ahead and do it.
They need permission from the insurance company first.
That's right. Every single extra thing has to be submitted to the insurance company for approval,
Wow.
and they get to decide if they'll pay for it or not.
Oh, wow. So even if the repair shop says something is absolutely necessary to fix the car correctly, the insurance company could still say no.
They could, and that puts the vehicle owner in a really tough spot because they might have to choose between paying out of pocket for the extra repairs or accepting a repair that might not be as comprehensive.
I can see how that would be a frustrating situation.
It definitely can be, and it highlights one of the key things for consumers to remember. The insurance company's primary focus is often on controlling costs.
Yeah, that makes sense, but it also makes you wonder how much that focus on cost might compromise the quality of the repair.
That's a valid concern, and we'll see examples of that as we go through this estimate.
Okay, so moving on, there's a note about labor and material rates being based on the local market, specifically the zip code where the repair shop is located.
Right, and it also says that they're using the prevailing competitive market rate, which basically means they're aiming for the lowest possible price.
So they want the cheapest option, basically.
Pretty much, and it even goes on to say that they're focused on part sourcing within policy coverage limits and fair and reasonable labor allowances.
What does all that mean in plain English?
Basically, it means they're trying to keep the cost of everything as low as possible within the limits of what your insurance policy will cover.
And what if the repairs actually cost more than that limit?
Well, then the shop is supposed to inform you, the customer, that you'll have to either pay the difference yourself or find another shop that will do the work within the insurer's budget.
So you might end up having to go to a different shop just because of the price, even if you trust and prefer the original one.
That's a possibility, and it's something to be aware of because chasing a lowest price doesn't always guarantee the best quality repair.
That's a really good point.
Uh-huh.
Okay, so let's get into some of the specific repairs listed here. On line 8, we see the front bumper cover, and it says they plan to repair it.
Uh-huh.
But then there's a note that says, repairable panel. Current photos do not support replacement. What does that tell us?
Well, it seems pretty straightforward at first glance. The insurance company has looked at the photos of the damage and decided that the bumper cover can be repaired rather than replaced.
But there's a catch, isn't there?
There is. The key thing to remember here is that those photos only show the surface damage. What they don't reveal is any potential hidden damage that might be lurking beneath the bumper cover.
Like damage to the mounting brackets or the sensors or maybe even the structure of the bumper itself.
Exactly, and that's something that the shop won't be able to fully assess until they actually remove the bumper cover.
So they could start the repair and then find out they need to replace the whole thing after all.
That's right, and then they would need to submit a supplement to the insurance company to get approval. And you remember what we talked about with supplements, right?
Yeah, they need the insurance company's permission before they can do any extra work.
Exactly. And that can lead to delays and more back and forth and potentially even disagreements about what's truly necessary to fix the car correctly.
Okay, let's move on to the next item, which is the front lamps. On line 14, we see Repli RCY-RT headlamp, ASSI with adaptive lights, plus 25%. Now that's a mouthful. What does it all mean?
Okay, so let's break it down. REPL simply means replace, and RCY is a common abbreviation for recycled.
So they're planning to replace the right headlamp assembly with a used part.
That's right, and it specifically mentions adaptive lights, which is a fancy way of saying these headlights adjust their beam pattern based on your steering and speed to better illuminate the road.
So it's not just a standard headlight. It's got
Yeah.
some pretty sophisticated technology in there.
It does, and that raises some questions about using a used part, because how old is that part? How much wear and tear does it have? Will it work as well as a brand new one? And then there's the Y1 plus 25% at the end. What do you think that means?
I'm guessing it means there's an extra charge for that recycled part, maybe because it's harder to find or something.
That's a possibility. It could also be related to the specific type of adaptive lighting system in this Lexus.
And is there anything else noteworthy in this section?
Yeah, it also mentions labor for aiming the headlamps, which is important for safety no matter if the headlamp is new or used.
Makes sense.
Okay, next up, we have the hood on line 25.
I see that.
It says blend hood, ALU, and I'm assuming blend means they'll be blending the paint to make the repair seamless. Yeah, that's likely what it refers to, and ALU probably means the hood is made of aluminum.
Okay, but there's a note right after that which says, no coverage for labor time above database allowance. So what's that about?
Well, this is another example of the insurance company trying to control costs. They have these industry databases that estimate how long certain repairs should take, and they're only willing to pay for that amount of time.
So what if the repair actually takes longer than what the database says?
Then the shop has to eat that extra cost. They don't get paid for the additional time, even if it's necessary to do the job correctly.
So they might feel pressured to rush the work to stay within the allowed time, even if it means the quality of the repair might suffer?
Exactly, and that's where the consumer might end up with a less than perfect finish on their car.
Maybe the paint doesn't match quite right, or it starts to chip or peel sooner than it should.
Exactly. And now we're getting to a part of the estimate that I think is super important for consumers to understand because it really highlights how insurance companies try to save money. So if you look at the list of parts that need to be replaced, you'll notice that many of them are labeled non-OEM. For example, we see Repl non-OEM insulator clip, Repl non-OEM couple RT fender, and later on, Repl non-OEM routine nameplate F Sport, and Repl non-OEM couple Orping MLDG. So what do you think non-OEM means?
Non-OEM, well, I know OEM stands for original equipment manufacturer, so I'm guessing non-OEM means it's not made by Lexus in this case.
You got it. Non-OEM parts are what we call aftermarket parts, meaning they're made by a different company than the one that originally built your car.
And what about KPay? I see that next to some of the parts too.
KPA stands for the Certified Automotive Parts Association. They're an independent organization that tests aftermarket parts to make sure they meet certain standards for fit, form, and function.
So it's like a seal of approval, basically.
Sort of. It's meant to give you some assurance that these aftermarket parts will work okay, but the key thing to remember is that they're still not the same as the parts that were originally designed and built for your specific Lexus.
So even if a part is KPA certified, it might not fit as perfectly or function as well as the OEM part.
That's a definite possibility. And there can be other downsides too, like a potential difference in the quality of the materials used or how well the part integrates with the car's safety systems. And some people argue that it could even affect the resale value of your car because some buyers prefer vehicles that have only been repaired with OEM parts.
Yes. So there's a trade-off there between saving money and potentially sacrificing quality or safety.
Exactly. And speaking of trade-offs, the estimate includes a section that talks about a guarantee on these non-OEM parts. It says that the insurer will replace any part that's not an OEM part if a defect is discovered. which sounds good in theory, but there's a catch, right?
Oh, there's always a catch. What is it this time?
Well, this guarantee is only good for as long as you, the original owner, still have the car. If you sell it, the guarantee is void. And it also usually doesn't cover any additional damage that might be caused by the defective part.
So if a faulty non-OEM part causes another part of your car to break, you might be stuck paying for that secondary damage yourself.
That's the risk. And here's another thing to consider. It's your responsibility to spot any defects and report them to the insurance company immediately, which means you have to be pretty vigilant and know what to look for.
So you got to be your own quality control expert.
Pretty much. Okay, so now I want to point out something that I think is super important and kind of concerning. It's on line 64, and it says, #access OEM repair information 1 note. This is not a covered operation. Now, this might seem like a minor detail, but it has huge implications.
What's so important about accessing OEM repair information?
Well, these days, cars are incredibly complex machines, especially hybrids like this Lexus, and they have very specific repair procedures that are outlined by the manufacturer. These procedures aren't just suggestions, they're crucial for making sure the car is repaired safely and correctly so that it retains its structural integrity and all the safety systems work as they should.
So basically, it's like the instruction manual for fixing the car in the exact way that the manufacturer intended.
Exactly. And what this note is saying is that the insurance company is not willing to pay for the shop to access those OEM repair instructions.
So they're essentially saying, just wing it, figure it out without the official guidelines.
Pretty much. And that's really worrisome because it means the shop might have to rely on general knowledge or their experience with other cars, which might not be enough to guarantee a proper repair on this specific model.
So even though accessing those OEM instructions is crucial for a safe and correct repair, the insurance company is trying to save a few bucks by not covering it.
Unfortunately, that seems to be the case, and that's something consumers really need to be aware of because it could affect the quality and safety of their car's repair.
Okay, so we're nearing the end of this estimate, and we see the breakdown of cost parts, labor, paint, etc. But there's one more thing that stands out to me. Right above the totals it says, prior damage notes. Vehicle qualifies for aftermarket crash parts. What does that mean?
That basically means the insurance company has already decided that this particular Lexus is eligible for aftermarket parts, probably because of its age or some other criteria they use. So they're going to be pushing for the use of non-OEM parts whenever possible as a way to save money.
So all those non-OEM designations we saw earlier, that's not a coincidence.
Yeah.
It's all part of their plan to keep costs down.
Exactly. And just to recap the supplement process, remember that any additional work or parts discovered by the shop need to be submitted online for approval, and it can take a few days for the insurance company to review those requests. And the shop can't even submit a supplement until the car is in their shop and they've taken it apart to fully assess the damage.
So it's a pretty time-consuming process and could mean your car is stuck in the shop for a while.
It definitely can. And it's something to keep in mind when you're choosing a repair shop. You might want to ask them about their experience with supplements and how they handle those situations.
That's a great tip. And finally, there's a disclaimer at the very bottom of the estimate that talks about the quality of non-OEM parts. It says they're required to be at least equal in kind and quality to the original parts. But how do they actually measure that equality?
That's the million-dollar question. While KP certification helps to ensure some level of quality control, there's still a lot of subjectivity involved. And if you, as the consumer, have an issue with a non-OEM part, maybe it doesn't fit right, or the paint doesn't match, or it just seems flimsy, it can be really difficult to prove that it's not equal to the original.
So it kind of puts the burden on you, the consumer, to fight for a proper repair.
It can feel that way, and that's why it's so important to be informed and proactive, to ask lots of questions, and to really understand what your insurance policy covers and what your options are.
Well, that's all the time we have for today's deep dive, but we hope this has given you a better understanding of the complex world of collision repair estimates and empowered you to be a more informed and confident consumer.
We hope so.
Thanks for listening, and we'll see you next time for another deep dive into a topic that matters.
See you then.
Whoa.
Crazy, isn't it?
You should have seen the look on both of our faces as we listened to this 5 minutes after I asked it to analyze the document and then come back and say, are my best interests being looked after?
Yep. Now, it's important to understand that we had nothing to do with the content.
None.
And I didn't expect it to even recognize what it was we were downloading.
Right.
We didn't ask it to talk about any specific categories.
Nope.
we had really no influence on what you just heard.
Yep.
There was no doctoring from us whatsoever. That is what came out of the can.
So ultimately, you've gone all the way through this video so far. Thank you for still being with us. I am going to leave the prompt that I wrote down in the description box and the link to Google's free AI Notebook LM. The applications are ridiculous across the boards, but look what it did in our situation. That could not possibly have been closer to our voice
Yeah. Yeah.
and what we try to educate our consumers.
And speaking of voices, those are all AI too. I mean, it's just unbelievable the conversation that was taking place between the computer.
Yeah.
It was, and I can't stress it enough. We had nothing to do with what you just heard,
Right.
other than downloading the estimate and saying, "Hey, tell us if this is good for us or not."
So there you have it, folks. That's really what we came to share with you. And Rob, I'm pretty sure this can be helpful for anybody if they need the services of any kind of estimating situation.
It'd be a great tool for you to use to understand what questions you should be asking both the shop and the insurer.
Yes.
And getting a better understanding of what all that means, because there's a lot of lines in these estimates today, and my hat's off to Google on this one. They really, I couldn't be more shocked.
Yeah.
And that's what I got from all the people that I shared it with.
Yeah.
Just to get a feel for what they thought, and it's unbelievable.
It really is.
It's unbelievable. So,
all right, with that, I'm going to say happy Saturday.
Happy Saturday to you. Happy Saturday to you. I hope you have an amazing week, and we'll see you next Saturday. God bless.